Hello, hello, everyone.
Good morning. We're just waiting for everybody to come in from the waiting room. Give everybody a couple of seconds. Okay, so maybe we start. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lorna Stokes and I work for Cost Association, and welcome to today's webinar for Cost Action participants about Open Research Europe, which is the European Commission's open access publishing platform for results and outputs stemming from EU-funded projects. We're really happy that so many of you are here joining us today for this webinar. I believe we had great interest in it with over 800 registrations. So we're really happy to see that there's such an interest from the Cost Action community on what Open Research Europe can offer cost actions. As I said, my name is Lorna. I work for Cost Association. I'm part of the communications team here. I'm just welcoming to you here to this webinar today. I'm joined by Emma Smith and Kelly Woods, who work for Open Research Europe. And we're super happy also to be joined by Jacques van Langveld, who is a Cost Action representative, and he will be sharing his experience as a Cost Action participant as well, publishing on the platform. So maybe to kind of very briefly, before I pass over to Emma, highlight that Cost Actions have been able to publish on Open Research Europe now for about 2 years. But last year we saw a huge acceleration in the outputs from the Cost Action community on the platform, which is something that we were really happy to see. So now I think we have almost 60 publications and 9 gateways, which Emma will be explaining a little bit more about over the course of the next 45 minutes or so. So maybe just a couple of hints and tips or explain what the flow of today is going to be. So Emma is going to explain the platform to us. Jacques is also going to share his experience, and then we will have a Q&A. So please don't hesitate to use the Q&A function in Teams to submit any questions that you might have. And then Kelly will be moderating the Q&A in the last part of the session. So yeah, please use that function to put any questions that you may have. And yeah, we look forward to sharing a little bit more about what Open Research Europe can offer your actions. So without further ado, Emma, shall I pass over to you so you can actually, let everybody know what they're here to learn about today?
Thanks, Lorna. That's great. Thank you for that introduction. And hi, it's lovely to see so many of you here. So first of all, before diving into the presentation itself, I've clicked a button on the browse page. I'm just going to share a Mentimeter questionnaire with the attendees, just to gauge a little bit about where everyone's at in terms of some of the aspects of Open Research Europe as a platform. If you've never used Mentimeter before, you can either use your phone to scan the QR code here or go to menti.com and type in that code at the top there, and then respond to the questions. So the first of these questions is whether you have ever deposited a preprint before. It's very fun watching the little pie chart like go backwards and forwards. So I'll just give everyone a minute here also here, just to sort of gauge responsiveness. Awesome. So it's looking like most people haven't deposited a preprint before, but a significant minority of you have. So that's great to see. Grand. And it looks like the pie chart is not shifting too much, just proportionally speaking. So I'm going to move on to the next question, so we have as much time as possible for presentations and to hear from Jacques. So yeah, have you ever engaged in open peer review before? Nope. So again, mostly no. Oh, but it's becoming pretty even. We're racing it out. Okay. So that's a very big spread there. in terms of whether people have or haven't engaged with open peer review? Oh, okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for your responses. Really helpful as a sort of to engage with. And then, have you ever shared your data before? The QR code is back now that you can, it's not obscuring anything on the main screen. Awesome. Grand.
That's a lot of dots.
That's a lot of dots. Lots of dots are happening.
I like the dot one.
Yeah, the dots are great. Grand. And so I think I was the last one for the pre-webinar questions. Grand. So without further ado, I'll actually get onto the presentation. Thanks again, everyone, for engaging with that. It really helps me sort of gauge the sort of where everyone is in terms of what it is that Open Research Europe has to offer. So yeah, okay. And now I shall be sharing some slides, which hopefully everyone should see. This worked before the webinar, so we'll see if it works during the webinar. Wonderful. Perfect. Thanks, Kelly. So today I'll be chatting with all of you about Open Research Europe, which is the European Commission's bespoke publishing platform. As we mentioned, I'll then hand over to Professor Jacques van Lankveld, and there'll be time for Q&A at the end. And do feel free at any point to drop your question in that Q&A section. It just makes it easier for us to grab things. You can also vote on questions. So if you see another question that is something that you're also interested in, it's useful to upvote that one rather than posting the same question again, because it just helps us gauge and helps us facilitate at the end there. So a little bit about open research practice in general. So open research does kind of what it says on the tin, in that research should be made open. It should be freely accessible to everyone. And I'm sure the vast majority of you here will be familiar with open access publishing, which is an aspect to open research, which has become really popular in sort of recent years. But it's worth noting that open research as a practice goes much broader than just sharing the article in an open manner. It also can include sharing methods and data to the community so that they can reuse that methodology and those data sets that you spend all your efforts on. And it also is around sharing the communication around peer review as well. So making peer review reports available, posting preprints early, and versioning articles so that it's easier to track over time how an article changes. And you can see through things like institutional policies and funder mandates that there is this growing support for open science and open research, with more and more funders requesting things like sharing data openly and preprinting articles prior to peer review. So as authors, why is this beneficial for you to do? So the first thing to note is that it provides much more transparency in the research and review process. So by providing reviews in an open way, and with reviewers going in knowing that they're going to be named and things like that, it helps make those reviews much more constructive for you as an author, with things that are easier for you to implement, rather than having to dig through comments to find the specifics that you're looking for in terms of what you need to revise. It also means that when you're sharing your research openly, more people have access to that. There's no financial barrier, no requirement for a subscription to a particular journal. Anyone can read that research. So that gives more visibility to you as an author, as well as increasing the potential impact of your research for people who maybe are not, don't have access to subscription journals and things like that. And this is therefore linked with higher citation rates because more people are reading your work, more people are using your ideas, and more opportunities for collaboration because, again, more people are reading your work and can find those connections with their own research and potentially talk to you about it. You can arrange meetups at various conferences and chat through various opportunities for collaboration. It also ensures that the academic process itself is more efficient. So as a researcher, you can more easily find other research that's happening. And so you're not having to unnecessarily repeat others' research or go down avenues that have maybe been explored by others that haven't proven to be fruitful. And it helps you comply with this growing funder mandate to support open research. So that's a little bit of background about open research principles in general. And in terms of how Open Research Europe came to be, it was that the European Commission wanted to establish a publishing platform that led by example on these core open research principles, allowing researchers to share their work, collaborate with others, and do so in a way that was open and quick. So we had the call for tenders back in 2019, and F1000 has been running and building and running Open Research Europe in collaboration with the European Commission since then. There were several aims and ambitions for Open Research Europe, which were to primarily share research rapidly and openly. So rather than waiting for several rounds of revision and review where a paper can't be used because it's sat in a journal backend system somewhere, to ensure that that research is published as soon as possible, along with data that has been made openly available. They also wanted to accommodate a really diverse range of research outputs to provide a much more tailored approach for people and to capture as many research outputs as possible so authors receive credit throughout the research process for the vast amount of work that it is that you guys are doing on the day-to-day. They also wanted the peer review process itself to be fully open and transparent, and to move away from journal impact factor as an indicator of the quality so that the research can be judged on its own merits and provide those article level metrics to support that sort of inference. And lastly, they wanted to ensure that the entire platform, as well as the publishing process, was transparent and cost effective. So for any eligible author, that is to say, you as cost action beneficiaries, there is no cost associated to you or your project budget or grant to publish on the platform. And you can publish results from this project even after the grant has ended. Within the wider scholarly publishing landscape, there are a number of initiatives and organizations across Europe that are encouraging open research practice and that have highlighted Open Research Europe as an example of successfully implementing things like Plan S. We've had support from the Council of the European Union, and only a couple of months ago, several major funders across Europe have signed a statement of intent to continue to support Open Research Europe in the coming years. So, in terms of that's the sort of background to Open Research Europe, what it is that we're trying to achieve, and the question now is, how do we do that, and how do you guys get in on that process? So the first step in terms of our open research publishing model is for authors to submit their research via our single page submission system. Once you have submitted that research, then our in-house editorial team will conduct a series of checks to ensure that you are eligible, you're a cost action beneficiary, so you will be, and checking for the article scope, making sure that reporting and ethical guidelines have been adhered to, and that data has been made available, and where it isn't, to support you in making the data available in line with FAIR principles wherever possible. Once those checks have been passed, our editorial team will be in touch if they have any questions. But once those checks have been passed, the article is then sent to our production team. who will fully typeset the article. It will be published online with the DOI so that that article is immediately viewable by the community, and it can begin to be cited and used by the research community as a whole. The article at this point is also indexed in Google Scholar, so the article can be more discoverable, and you can sort of share it among your networks as well. Once the article has been published, that is when the peer review process will begin. So our in-house editorial team will secure expert reviewers to provide comments on the manuscript. The model used to be led by authors, but we changed this back in April last year so that you have less on your plate because you guys are incredibly busy. So in that way, you don't have to suggest reviewers anymore, but you are, of course, more than welcome to, because after all, you are experts in your own fields. Once we receive a peer review report, our editorial team will check it for things like tone and content, and then that review and the reviewers' names will be published alongside the article. As authors, you have the ability to comment and provide an author response on the review if you would like to do so, but again, there's no requirement to do that. It's just an option should you wish to do so. Once 2 reviews have been submitted, at least, we would recommend that you, as authors, would then go away and revise the article and resubmit if any changes have been requested by the reviewers. We would then issue a new version of that article, which would be linked to the original article and also be independently citable in its own right, and then invite the reviewers for that new version of the article. Once an article passes peer review, and I'll get into that in the next slide, once an article passes peer review, that's when it is sent to major indexing services and databases, for example, PubMed, Scopus, places like that. A full list of where it is that we're indexed is available on the website. So in this sort of example peer review status, you can see the different versions of the article and the peer review report statuses alongside them. So in the first version of the article at the bottom there, you can see that the reviewers selected the green question mark status and the red cross status. So the green question mark means approved with reservations, which is to say that core aspects of the paper need some revisions to really fully round out that manuscript and support the conclusions that the authors are drawing. Whereas the sort of red cross not approved is an indication and request for major revisions. So to some of the core aspects of the manuscript need significant work to really support the claims that the authors are making about their data. The authors then went away, did some revisions, and then submitted a second version, which you can see. Both reviewers in this example updated their statuses to green ticks, which is to say approved. So the paper is considered sound in its current form, and very, very minor tweaks are suggested by the reviewers here. So this second version of the article has passed peer review because it has 2 approved status reviews. Another way for an article to pass peer review is if there are at least 1 approved and 2 approved with reservations statuses given by reviewers. And once an article passes peer review, that's when it is sent to downstream indexing services like PubMed and Scopus. This is an example of an article from our website. So you can see the authors in this paper have 3 different versions of their article, all of which are linked together. You'd be able to access each individual version by clicking on the numbered versions there on the right-hand side, as well as you can see the authors' names and read the authors' reviews. This also, as a reviewer, helps give you credit for co-reviewing and sort of visibility for doing your bit in sort of making sure that peer review is moving forward. And if you were to co-review, the co-review would also be credited here as well. As you can see, each article also receives article level metrics, which we'll go into here in a little bit more detail. These metrics are immediately viewable as soon as the article is published, so you can begin tracking views and downloads straight away. You can also see where an article has been cited through things like dimensions and PubMed Central. And we also draw data from Altmetric for where the article has been discussed in a slightly more informal setting. For example, X, formerly known as Twitter. You could tell that this screenshot was taken a little while ago. And the referencing databases for things like Mendeley. We also display cumulative views as well as sessions per country. So you can see where your article is being viewed and when there are upticks in that sort of view count, so you can track back and see whether your article has recently been cited or recently been sort of included in some other form of discussion. So I'm going to take a breather again. There we are. What can you actually publish on Open Research Europe? The design of the platform is intended to support research across all disciplines and all article types. So you can see from this slide, we have a lot of different article types for many different disciplines. We have editorial guidelines and policies specifically for science, technology and medicine, social sciences and humanities. So this helps to tailor the content because we appreciate that a research article in humanities is going to look quite different than a research article in psychology. So this guidance is available for everyone to read and sort of tailor their research articles. It's worth highlighting all of these article types are checked by our editorial team. They all undergo this pre-publication checks that I mentioned earlier. They will all be fully typeset and citable with their own DOI, fully peer-reviewed, and once they pass peer review, would be indexed in those downstream services, such as Scopus and PubMed. And the reason why we wanted as many different article types as possible is to support you in publishing throughout the life cycle of the research, because we appreciate that there are a lot of different aspects to research that can benefit from having an article dedicated to them. For example, if you're developing a new piece of software or you have an innovative study protocol that you would like to share that you think others in the community could benefit from, it allows you to share that research earlier and sort of really captures the amount of work that you're doing throughout the life cycle of the research process. And as I mentioned before, you can submit, there are an unlimited number of submissions that you can make to Open Research Europe as a cost action beneficiary. So you can sort of publish throughout the life cycle of the project. So what do you need to do to prepare your research for submission in Open Research Europe? It's worth highlighting that before you submit, the work should be original and not submitted anywhere else other than preprint servers. The study should, as you expect, meet all research and publication guidelines and ethical standards, and that the methods and data should be made available. Obviously, you should include all of your author details and conflict of interest statements, and all authors should understand the policies that Open Research Europe has around article publication and our publishing model of fully open peer review that happens after the article has been published. In terms of making your data available, all articles need to have a data availability statement and appropriate deposits of those data. That can be data that you are generating as a part of a study, or source data that you have access through archives and things like that. We appreciate that there are very different awarenesses of making data available and very different restrictions in mind for different disciplines and different fields. So we have guidelines available on our website tailored to researchers in life and natural sciences, physical sciences and engineering, and humanities and social sciences. So those are great resources to go to if you have any questions. But of course, you can always reach out to me or our editorial team if you have any questions and aren't really sure how to go about sharing your data. And then, as Lorna briefly alluded to, cost actions have their own gateway on Open Research Europe. So you can submit your work directly to this gateway and ensure that your work is published among the work of other cost beneficiaries. And we also have collections available to you as an option. So if we can set up a collection where you and other members of your cost action can share your work in one place. And I believe Jacques has some experience with that, so he may bring that up, but no pressure. And then I just wanted to mention exactly where we are indexed. We have a wide variety of services that index Open Research Europe, for example, PubMed, Scopus, Google Scholar, and a variety of approved national journal lists. We have, again, a page on our website, which is dedicated to listing all the places where it is that we are indexed at. So what's next for Open Research Europe? What are we planning for the next few years? So a new open source software platform is being built. This tender was won by the Public Knowledge Project, who are adapting their journal systems to suit the publishing model of Open Research Europe. And we're always working with European Commission and now national funders across Europe to try and expand the eligibility criteria and allow more European researchers to share their research in a fully open and transparent way with no author-facing fees. So that's where we want to go. Thank you for listening to me and this presentation. I hope you found it useful. And as I say, there'll be questions shortly. I'm waffling so that anyone who wants to can scan the QR codes. But yeah, thank you for listening to me, and I shall hand over now to Jacques.
You might be muted because we can't hear you.
I think so, yes. Thank you, Emma, for your explanation. I was happy to recognize much of what you just said during the process of publishing some papers in a collection from our cost action. Just to introduce myself, I'm an emeritus professor of clinical psychology, and I was working, that's the connection with Open Research Europe, I was working as a work group leader of a cost action called European Sexual Medicine Network that was working from 2019 until late 2023. So we worked for large part within the COVID period, which made communication sometimes quite difficult. We had to do a lot online, and that was not easy always. So when we came to the to the second part of the lifespan of the cost action, we started working on publications, which was quite difficult for several reasons, but it became a little bit different when we were introduced to Open Research Europe, because from that time onward, we had support. We had I was given a connection with Alicia, one of the, I'm not sure what her position was within Open Research Europe. She may be one of the account managers or whatever, but she was a constantly available person to ask questions to. And she helped us first to start with a team of advisors, they are called, advisors to the collection. So we we identified people who were willing to do that, and we actually became a very nice team that worked together for a couple of years. And then we had to tell all people, members of the cost action, what the possibilities were. Many of them were not familiar with with open access publishing, yes, but not with open review processes and not with publishing preprints, just like the questions that Emma asked in the beginning of the session. So we had to do a lot of work in familiarizing members of the cost action with this idea. And that took some time, but gradually people were moving to our side and were willing to submit their papers. What was next? I think we from that point onward, we had a very smooth process with Alicia guiding us with every paper that was submitted through the process of the technical checks and of the what we needed to do in response to the review reports, etc. So in the end, it was. I think we had a very nice collection of articles that were reflecting parts of the work of this cost action that were very we're not able to. Well, let me tell you that we first had a plan to publish a special issue of another journal, and it took some time to find out that this was very difficult. So in the end, we had this collection in Open Research Europe, and this was really what we wanted to do. And there was one specific aspect that was very important too, because in the end, of the cost action, we were running out of budget, really. So it was very good to learn that we were able to publish this without the costs that we would have to pay for publishing special issues in another medium. So in the end, altogether, it was a very good experience. We had enough support. And we found out that this was really a very good way to publish our work. I think that's what I can say at the moment. Maybe I can respond to other questions.
Oh, thanks very much. Lorna, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jacques. That was great. And I think what you really highlighted there for me was something that I just want to double stress here about how supportive the Open Research Europe team have been to cost actions. And, I mean, Emma had that slide up there at the end with her contact details, but I mean the feedback that we get at Cost Association a lot is how supportive the Open Research Europe team have been in helping actions navigate publication for the first time. Is this relevant? Would this sort of thing be accepted? How can we do this? And so, yeah, I think really big thanks to kind of like making sure that this process works as easy as possible on both sides, especially if people aren't familiar with what open peer review means or what publishing on a platform like this is. Emma, Kelly, before we dive into the Q&A bit, do you mind if I just highlight a couple of things on the cost side, which I think Jacques alluded to there as well, but maybe just to make that really, really, really explicit.
Go for it.
So publishing on Open Research Europe is free of charge for cost actions. So absolutely nothing is deducted from the action budget, and basically the article processing charges or any costs that are incurred are covered by the European Commission in that kind of like way of thinking of it on behalf of the action. So publishing on Open Research Europe isn't taking away from the action budget, and if you want that is a great advantage, as you said, Jack. Money was maybe running out towards the end of the project, but you still wanted to be able to get your research out there in the public domain, making sure it was accessible to all. There is also no deadline. So it's possible to publish on Open Research Europe even after your cost action has ended. So obviously, if you're putting together a publication you want to submit to a normal journal and you want to use your action budget for that, that has to happen within the lifetime of the action. Whereas, the great thing about Open Research Europe is that there could be stuff that's finalized or submitted after the end of the action, which is certainly, we've certainly got, outputs on Open Research Europe from actions that have ended, because, we understand that the research collaboration process doesn't end exactly on the date that the grant agreement concludes. And, you're tying up loose ends, or, other things are coming up, or maybe other ideas are emerging towards the end of the project. So I think that offers a huge, great flexibility towards cost actions as well, that, you do have this ability to publish on ORA after the end of the action. I think that maybe, Emma, I don't know if it's possible to show that, or maybe I'll just put that in in the chat. But I think also maybe it's good to highlight that for cost actions, you submit using your cost action number. So your CA 1234, sort of number. When you're submitting your research, and if you haven't been talking, for example, directly with Emma or something like that, when you're submitting on the platform, you can use your CA number, your full CA number. Now, I know that maybe some of you who have attended this webinar before, or who are familiar with maybe what we talked about with Open Research Europe a couple of years ago, this wasn't possible, because at the time you couldn't submit with a funder ID that had a mixture of letters and numbers, but that is no longer a problem or an issue. So when you submit, please submit using your full CA number. So then it makes it a lot easier for Emma and Kelly and the other team at Open Research Europe to identify who you are, because they have a list of all the cost actions. So they, by using your CA number, they can very easily identify that, oh yeah, no, you are eligible because you're coming from a cost action. And that there's also a kind of a short eligibility, a small acknowledgement text as well that we ask you to use. I mean, I can drop that text in the website as well, but our colleagues at ORA are also very familiar with that. But basically just saying that this work is a result of the cost action and what the full name of your cost action is, and that you received funding from the European Union's framework program for research innovation as part of the cost action. So the usual funder blah blah that we like to see as well, because that also helps us track, and that's really important for us to be able to track how many cost actions are using this, so that we can advocate for more opportunities for the cost action community. And maybe one last thing on my side, but maybe Emma, I'll ask you to clarify that. Can we talk about authors? And so how many authors have to be involved in a paper for it to be successfully submitted to Open Research Europe from the cost action side? Because this is also different from other rules on the cost side for other publications, which I think also makes Open Research Europe a lot more accessible to the cost action community as well.
Yeah, I can go ahead and answer that. So to be eligible to publish on the platform, at least one author on the paper should be associated with an eligible funding program like cost actions. So if you are sharing research and you're the only author on this collaborative piece who is sharing research that is related to the cost action, then you can that article will be eligible to publish on Open Research Europe for free. So yeah. Just worth highlighting. Thanks for flagging that, Lorna. Where are we at with
start tackling the questions?
Yeah, I've seen quite a few coming through. Thanks everyone for your engagement.
Let's see. I'm still seeing some coming through to the chat. I've tried to move as many as possible over to the Q&A section, but if you could try to put them in the Q&A section, that would really help me out, but I'll do my best to find them. So the most common question we have had is about the impact factor. Does Open Research Europe have an impact factor? Normally people ask for this for publications, or is it only indexed in Scopus, Google Scholar, and the other places that you highlighted, Emma?
Yeah. So Open Research Europe does not have an impact factor because we are not indexed by Web of Science. Part of this is that Open Research Europe and the European Commission in general is trying to move away from journal impact factor as a metric of assessment. The European Commission is involved in organisations like COARA, the Coalition of Advancing Research Assessment, to move away from using a sort of aggregate citation metric for a journal as a way of indicating quality on your specific scientific or research. So that's sort of part of the reason. Also, the model just isn't eligible for the open peer review system that we use.
Thank you very much. The next one is the same question. How are the reviewers selected, and is there a minimum number?
Yeah. So reviewers are selected if they are experts. So they're qualified, so they have a PhD broadly in the topic. Expert, so they've published recently in the field, and impartial. So there's no conflicts of interest. You're not on an active grant publishing together, not the same institution. You know the drill. And we aim as well to have as diverse a pool of reviewers as possible. So those are the criteria that we use to select reviewers. As authors, you are, of course, more than welcome to suggest reviewers who you think would be appropriate and would fit that criteria. We consider peer review to have been completed once we have at least 2 peer reviews on an article. So yeah, that's the sort of sum there.
Okay, thank you. What is the typical timeline for Open Research Europe publishing from submission to publication, and how long does the peer review process take?
Yeah, great and important questions. So currently, and obviously this is on a case-by-case basis, so we're talking in medians and averages. The timeline from submission to publication, which is the editorial checks and the typesetting process, I believe is hovering at around 6-ish weeks. And from publication to when peer review is complete, that is to say that you have the 2 reviews on the article, that I think that's hovering at around 2-ish months, give or take, I believe. Obviously that will vary, and that sort of initial process, like if you have your data made available, if you are adhering to all of the criteria, and go through and ensure that on submission those checks are being managed, you're providing your full cost action number, that makes that timeline much, much shorter, because our editorial team have everything they need to just put the manuscript through, and it will pass straight to our production team.
Yeah, thanks. I would say normally the editorial team review your manuscript once it's submitted within 7 days, and you'll hear back from them within that 7 days with any initial questions that we have about it. So it's quite a quick initial turnaround, and then it kind of does depend on the level of changes that we ask you to make and how long it takes you to do that. And thanks for that, Emma. Is there an APC? Lorna kind of already addressed this. The article processing charges are completely covered by the European Commission, so there are no author-facing fees for publishing on the platform. Can the results from STSMs be published as well, or is this only for cost conferences? Lorna, is that a cost acronym?
Yeah, so
okay.
and this is something actually we talked about before, and I think it's definitely worth us investigating further. So an STSM is a short-term scientific mission. So maybe for Kelly and Emma's benefit, Cost Actions have a budget for various different networking tools and mobility schemes. So a short-term scientific mission is the ability for a researcher to travel to a different laboratory or a research location in a different university and spend time there, funded by the Cost Action, in order to learn how to use a new method or a tool, a piece of apparatus, collaborate with a particular researcher that they wouldn't necessarily have access to in their home country. So say, for example, I'm a researcher based in Belgium. I'm going to travel to Greece to collaborate and shadow and work with a researcher or a laboratory that has access access to a super sophisticated telescope that I don't have access to, in my home country, in my home university, in my home institution. So STSMs are vary in length. Actions can kind of set that according to, what budget and the interest and the domain. And researchers often, when they come back, they publish a report, but also lots of great stuff comes out of STSMs. So you've got a lot of co-publications, a lot of collaboration, a lot of networking. And so, I think the question of can we publish an STSM result as part of that? So I think that for me, it is eligible in the fact that, yes, it's results stemming from a cost action. It's intrinsically linked to the cost action. You got this STSM because, it's linked to the domain of the topic and the field of the cost action. I suppose the question is whether, what your output or what the result you want to share is, whether that fits within the different article types that Emma alluded to earlier. But I think in this case, this is definitely something where you reach out to Emma and say, look, I've been on this STSM here. This is what I did. This is what I've done. This is the sort of research that I managed to carry out there. Would this be relevant? And I think that, I think it's a perfect conversation to have, to exchange, to see whether that is relevant.
Thanks very much, Lorna. I always hate it when random acronyms get thrown at me. The EC has so many
we have
acronyms. I don't know them all.
Yeah, we have a lot of acronyms as well in cost.
Okay, can you publish work generated from outside of a cost action project?
So there are a number of different eligible funding programs. So things like Horizon Europe, Horizon 2020, if you still have any research kicking about from there, Marie Curie fellowships and things like that. A full list of funding programs that are eligible are available on our website. I can post a link to that in chat. There we are. And so if you have any questions, it's worth referring to that and seeing if you're a part of European Research Council as well, things like that. So there are a wide array of different European Commission funding programs that are eligible to publish on Open Research Europe.
Very much. Let's see. Someone mentioning that the website isn't working. I am on the website. It does appear to be working for me, so I'm not sure why you're experiencing any issues, but if that continues, please contact our IT team and they'll be able to help you with that. In the context of any cost action, there are some conferences held during the year. Do you think a collaboration with the cost action on the conference, could we collaborate with the cost action on the conference so that research that was presented there could be published on ORE?
Yeah, we've had several collections emerge of papers coming from presentations given at conferences. So we'd be happy to chat about that. Just get in touch with me and sort of we can have a chat about the sort of specifics of what that might look like. In general, because I also saw there was a question about sort of collections in general. You'd have to get in touch with a member of the publishing team, so myself or Kelly, and we can have a chat about sort of the title, who the advisors are, and what it is that the scope of the collection would be, and sort of how much you'd sort of expect in terms of like papers to come from that. I don't know if Jacques had any specifics. Sorry to throw this at you all of a sudden, Jacques, but any specifics from your time chatting with Alethea about setting up a collection. But yeah, it would just be getting in touch with me or Kelly right now.
Yep.
Anything to add, Jacques?
No, that's exactly what my experience is.
Okay, I'm just dropping my Calendly link in the chat. Emma already shared hers. I don't know if you want to share your screen again, Emma, just with the Calendly link so people can book in.
Yeah,
and they can...
I'll also grab my own link as well and drop that in chat.
Maybe just while we talk about the collections, I think it's also really nice just to highlight that these collections are hugely varied as well from the cost action perspective right now. So, I mean, Jacques is obviously, coming at this from the perspective of his collection on sexual health and sexual medicine, but we've also got collections on fintech and AI and finance, blastocytis. We've got one on women's migration. There's another one on circular economy. So I think that's also really great to see the variety of different cost actions and the potential of the collection as well to represent lots and lots of different fields. So yeah, I think that's also something that I really like to see, just the diversity of that as well.
How can someone get to be a reviewer on Open Research Europe?
On the website, assuming that it is working for you, on the reviewer guidelines section, way down at the bottom, there is a form for you to be able to contact our editorial office to volunteer to be a reviewer. I would like to resume from slide 23, please. Just share that form and your CV with our editorial office, and we can add you to our reviewer pool.
Thank you very much. There's still some questions about impact factor. I appreciate that people often see this as a barrier with publishing on Open Research Europe because there isn't an impact factor. I would say the research assessment landscape is moving away, or is trying to move away from using journal impact factors and venue-based metrics as a measure for quality of an article. So hopefully this is something that will change as time goes on, and that is what the European Commission is trying to drive by having a model like Open Research Europe. I think it's really good to see the other 10 national funders, I think it's actually 11 now, that have expressed an interest and signed that statement of intent to supporting Open Research Europe in the future. I think this shows that this is not just something that the European Commission is trying to implement for their researchers, but this is actually something that lots of national funders across Europe are interested in pushing and driving change in the research assessment landscape. So I appreciate that you still have to play the game a little bit at the minute if you are concerned about your career progression, and we do understand that. But I would encourage you to have a look at the wide variety of article types that we offer on Open Research Europe, and there might be some alternative article types there that you cannot publish in other journals. Perhaps there's something that doesn't fit in the main story of your research article that you're trying to tell, and you want to publish it as a brief research report or as a data note. Maybe you've produced a bit of software as part of your cost action, and you can publish an article called a software tool article that explains how and why you created that piece of software and how it can be used. So I think we do have lots of ways that you can engage with the platform and make use of it and share outputs from your research project that maybe couldn't be shared in any other journal. Sorry to jump in there. I just can't help but chat when it's about Open Research Europe. We had a question about whether you can publish when the action is over. I think we've already covered that. Yes, you can. If a publication doesn't pass peer review, can it be submitted to some other journal, Emma?
Yeah. It's worth noting that when an article doesn't pass peer review, that is not a rejection from us. That is a request for major revisions more than it is an outright rejection. So you would not be able to submit somewhere else. You can, however, continue to revise your article and update it. So you would just issue a new version. Let's say you know, as in that example that I provided earlier, we had a reviewer that said approved with reservations and one reviewer that said not approved. You can go away, revise your article, and then in the second version receive 2 approved reviews. So it's a way of sort of sharing the sort of versioning of your article. So not passing peer review isn't a rejection, it's a request for major revisions.
Yeah, but you can't take it somewhere else. Once it's published on Open Research Europe, it is published the same as it would be perceived as being published in any other journal. So you can't publish it anywhere else. Let's see. Be interested in a bit more details on data notes as a publishing format. In this cost action, we curate various different data for further use by researchers and practitioners.
Yeah. That's really cool. So data notes themselves are articles that accompany a data set that you've deposited somewhere else, say Zenodo, and it describes the details of how and why that data was created, what decisions went into collecting the data in the way that you collected it, and ways, strengths of the data set and potential limitations of the data set. It doesn't include analyses or conclusions. It's just a way to highlight this data set and bring it to a broader range of people, because you would have once the data note passes peer review, it would be indexed in places like Scopus and Google Scholar, and it can sort of spread awareness of the data set as well as adding key context that is kind of difficult to share within the data set itself.
Great, thank you. One note on that, the data should be generated and owned by the authors. So you can't publish a data note that's referring to data that somebody else created that you're just curating. It must be generated and owned by you. And it's fine if the data has already been used in a previous publication. That's fine as long as you cite that publication that refers to the data, then you can still publish a data note about it. Are platforms run by the Wikimedia Foundation, such as Wikisource or Wikidata, accepted open data repositories for Open Research Europe?
So repositories should adhere to fair data principles. I should know this, but I don't know if the Wikimedia group actually adhere to these policies. But fair data sharing requires that data is findable, it's accessible, it's interoperable, so it can move between various different systems, and it is reusable. And so it should ensure that all of those requirements are met. It should also be openly licensed, which I'm not sure if the Wikimedia Commons does, and have a persistent identifier like a DOI. So there's more information about what a repository is required to, like the requirements that you should meet when you are depositing your data is available on the website through our various data guidelines. And these are tailored for, as I mentioned, like life and natural sciences, humanities and social sciences, and physical sciences and engineering to accommodate the sort of range of data that you are likely to be dealing with. You can also, if you have any questions, get in touch with me or our editorial team about your specific data set, and we can potentially offer a bit more guidance there that's sort of more specific to your particular case.
Yeah, you can also drop if you have a repository that you think should tick all those boxes but is not included on our list, you can drop us an email and we can do an assessment of that repository and see if it can be included on our list as well. So there should be details of how to do that on the data guidelines page. Emma, could you maybe drop the link in the chat, or Lorna, someone? Thank you. Let's have a look. So whilst Emma's doing that, I'll take the next question. The articles, do they have to be published in English, or can you publish in other European languages? So the main content of the article has to be published in English, but Open Research Europe does have the option to allow you to publish the abstracts of the article in up to 4 other languages. So you have to submit in English, but you can also provide an abstract in French, Spanish, Italian, and or German. If you have a particularly multilingual team, you can submit an abstract in all of those languages, but that's entirely up to you. But the article can only be published in English. I guess Zenodo is a trusted open data repository. Is that also true for platforms run by Wikimedia? Oh, that's the same one, my bad. There is a big debate regarding the usage of AI for writing articles. Is Open Research Europe is pro or cons the use of AI in scientific publications?
So we have guidelines on the use of AI in articles that are, at this stage, it's becoming less of a question of the pros and cons of using AI and more a question of people are using it. How should it be used in a way that is ethical and appropriate and appropriately declared? We have guidelines on if you are someone that has used AI to help polish up some of your writing, about ways that you would declare that. It should always be declared that you have used a large language model of any kind to sort of support, enhance ideas, generate in any capacity. It should be declared in the article and what role it had. AI, you as an author are always accountable for the content that it generates. AI hallucinations are very real, and It just sort of recognizes that this is where a citation should go and just randomly picks 2 names in a year. So it's, you should be diligent about checking what outputs it's having, as I'm sure anyone who does use it is. But just to make sure that you as the authors are accountable for checking what it, if you include anything from an AI generated source, you should be diligent about checking the accuracy of that, and if it is incorrect, you personally and the author team are accountable for any inaccuracies therein, and correcting them. As I say, there's some guidelines in your various article guidelines about how to appropriately declare that. But yeah, that's where we stand, I think.
Yep, that sounds good to me. Can you explain a little bit about the approach for getting a DOI? Do we get a DOI through our institutions, through Open Research Europe, and how does this play out in multi-partner projects like Cost Actions?
So by publishing with Open Research Europe, your article gets a DOI. It is a publication in that sense, which as you get a DOI from a journal article or from a preprint, you will get a DOI by publishing your article with us. In terms of if you're chatting about other data sets at secondary repositories, that will be policies related to that particular repository.
And then we have a question for Jacques. How did you convince people to contribute, as this is a new way of publishing?
Well, first of all, we had to repeat the process of giving information about how Open Research Europe works. You can't. It's difficult to convince people in one turn. So we had to repeat that. We were also able to show by giving people access to the articles that were already submitted and in the process, and seeing how that worked and how it looked. That was another way to convince people to contribute. And finally, there was this. What I mentioned, the problem that we were running out of budget in the end, and we finally had to convince people, well, if you want to publish, this is the only available route within our that's within our grasp. So
Thanks very much. In a similar vein, we have another question. Why should I publish in Open Research Europe and not in a normal journal? I still cannot understand the needs except for the lack of an APC.
So to our mind, there are several advantages to publishing with Open Research Europe. The first is you are engaging in a fully open and transparent peer review model, which allows everyone to be able to read and access your article much earlier than they would in a traditional journal process. So whereas when you submit to a normal journal, the only people that read your work for literal months, unless you make it available as a preprint, is the reviewer, the editor, and you. So it allows people to be able to read and access your work and begin using it at a much earlier stage of the process, like after those initial editorial checks have been passed. The open review process itself also allows the community to benefit from the open peer reviews. So the time that you as a reviewer are spending, which I'm sure you also review as well, that information isn't just lost in a journal system and only ever seen by authors. It can be shared more broadly with the community so other people can benefit from your expertise and the time that you are spending on reviewing articles. From that side of things as well, as an author, we tend to find that reviewers engaging in open review models, because they have their names attached to the article and they know the review is going to be public, they have a tone which is a lot more constructive and present requests for revisions and things like that in a way that is much more actionable for you as an author, because, as I say, like their names are attached to it. It's something that is public out there for them. So that is sort of another benefit of the model. And there are use cases as well with the versioning system where you can continue to update your article even once it's past peer review. So for example, if there is a reason to have a living review of a particular topic in your field, there seems to be a lot of cutting edge research all the time, then you can continue to issue new versions of the article if you would like to do so. Let's say every couple of years, you could issue a new review accommodating all of the new literature. So there's a lot of different use cases for that. We also have a wide array of article types. So you're not limited to just publishing research articles with us. You can share new methods, new software, data notes describing those data sets, reviews, opinions, open letters if you're touching on things related to policies and things. So there are a wide array of article types that you can use as well, while still also potentially sort of, as Kelly alluded to earlier, like playing the game a little bit and having to publish in those sort of more traditional journal settings as well. The two can work together. So I think that's what I would say. And of course, it is free. That is a good benefit to have as well for you as the authors.
Yeah, I think when we speak to researchers, a lot of them really agree that the research assessment system is currently a little bit broken. And most of the researchers we speak to actually really agree with a lot of the founding principles of Open Research Europe, but they do feel some level of hesitation in publishing their, best piece of research on the platform, if you like, because they do need to play the game. And we do understand that. However, I do think it's important for researchers to lead the charge on changing the system of research assessment. It's a little bit chicken and egg. So I would encourage researchers as much as possible. If you agree with the model of the platform and you want to try it, please do try it. And if you want to kind of see this change in research assessment, then you kind of have to be the change, which sounds a little bit glib and a little bit cliche, but I think it's true. I would really like to see this research assessment system change from the bottom up as opposed to from the top down. I think it's really important to understand what researchers actually want and need, and how journals can best deliver that. And we hope that Open Research Europe is a step in the right direction, but we do need that support from researchers in order to make it more the norm for publishing. I don't know, Lorna, if you have anything to add or if you've actually crashed.
I haven't crashed. I'm still here.
Your video has crashed, but that's good.
Oh, my
to know
video
you're
has
still
crashed.
Here.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm definitely still here. Yeah. No, I'm definitely still here. I'm sorry. I probably froze in a highly attractive manner as well then, didn't I?
You look fine. You just look like you're concentrating. It's fine. Okay, quick questions. Do we have a limit on the maximum number of authors? No, as many authors as you want. There was also a very technical question about the institution not being in the drop-down list when you actually go to submit a paper. So I'm glad that people are already going to submit a paper from this webinar. That's great. That's fine. If your institution doesn't appear in the drop-down list, please just type the name of your institution in and our system will take that as your institution. So just make sure that it is written exactly how you would like it to be displayed in your article, because we will take exactly what you've written in that box. That's fine. It's a little bit misleading when you actually submit, so I appreciate that's a bit confusing, but yeah, that's fine.
There's two questions in the chat actually that weren't in the Q&A thing. So maybe I'll answer the first one because it refers to another acronym, or it's about working group members. Can working group members submit? Yeah, I mean, so as a cost is structured, the way that your action is structured, that does not matter. There's no discrimination. You don't have to be the action chair, vice chair, or one of the main leadership positions. You don't have to be a management committee member. You can be a working group member. So anyone who is an action participant can submit. So the Open Research Europe team are not discriminating on the position within the action. And also when you look at the collections, for example, and how they're curated, some of those action collections are being curated by the chair or the vice chair, but sometimes they're being curated by the science communication manager, or somebody who is responsible for publications, or just somebody who is very engaged. I mean, Jacques, I think you're the science communication coordinator, aren't you, for your cost action, or of previous times? Yeah, so in that sense, leadership position isn't important. But two little questions, Emma, or maybe big questions. Can we publish books? And also this question I found really interesting. So what safety measures does Open Research Europe have regarding paper mills and other fraudulent publication practices?
Cool. Do you want to take the books question, Emma?
So in terms of publishing books, we can't support book publishing at the moment, and it's not on the agenda in the immediate term future either. We do support that sort of wide variety of article types, but not books or monographs or anything related like that.
Yeah, this is a question we get quite a lot actually, and it is something I have flagged to the European Commission over the years that people really would like to use the platform to publish books. I think they wanted to get it established as a kind of journal type venue first for publishing research articles. But I would say if you want to publish books on Open Research Europe, let the Open Science Unit at the European Commission know that this is where you would like the direction of the platform to go. And then hopefully they can factor that into their decision making in the future. And then the question around safeguarding, that's a really interesting one. So our editorial team conduct a number of different checks on every single article that is submitted. We do not do spot checking. Every single article that is submitted gets subjected to all of these checks. And we're looking for things like authorship, making sure that you have supplied us with, where possible, an institutional email address. And we also run checks on plagiarism. We run checks on AI generated text. We run a litany of different checks. There is information on the website about some of the checks that we do, but we also have to withhold some information about some of the checks we do, exactly for the reason that you say. If we told you every single way that we were checking the manuscript, then those sneaky people that like to build these tools that generate papers such as for paper mills would find new ways to circumvent our checks. So we share as much as we can, but we hold a certain amount back with regards to how we actually check the papers. But we can drop a link in the chat to show you what we can share about that. Emma, I don't know if you have anything. Oh, cool. Thank you, Emma. Did you have anything to add to
that? No, not really. But Jacques, you raised your hand, Jacques.
Yes, I saw an interesting question in the chat about what some people may consider an advantage of publishing papers before it's approved by the reviewers. Others can take as a disadvantage because you disclose ideas of research before they are published. They are published, but they're not validated by the review process. But I thought that, well, if you, in connection to submitting and publishing it in preprint, you also deposit your data and your analysis scripts, etc., in a publicly available space. So there it's recorded. That's recording what you have done. That it's you as the owner of the research that prohibits other people from just taking it and running off with it. So that was my idea. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly the benefit of early publication. It really helps you sort of establish the priority to your ideas in a way that is fast and allows you to have like a time-stamped DOI like permanent record that you can begin to cite. So that's sort of a way of raising awareness of your research early. I appreciate this is a concern that people tend to have around like preprinting in general as well. If you are sort of new to preprinting, it's not really that familiar to you, I'd recommend checking out ASAP Bio as an organization. Their work is tailored towards life sciences, but their preprint FAQs are broadly applicable. So if you have any questions about preprinting or early access publication, or like a pre like model like we have, where we publish first, then review the article, then those are good resources to check out if you have concerns or questions more generally. And of course, do feel free just to get in touch, and happy to have a chat and sort of discuss any concerns you might have.
So I'm seeing another question in the chat about data obtained from FAO and Eurostat sources, which have been further analysed. Can these be published as new data sets? Do you want me to say that one, Emma?
I got puzzled by acronyms.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think I've heard of Eurostat before. So you couldn't publish it as a data set because you didn't generate the data. You as the author of the data don't own the data. However, if you have used that data and run some new analysis on it and drawn some new conclusions, then yes, you could publish that as either a research article if you've run significant analysis and drawn significant conclusions from this, or perhaps as a brief research report if it's a smaller question that you're trying to answer with your reanalysis of this data. But yes, that in theory can be published. Where did I saw another question that was really interesting about peer reviewers. So it's extremely difficult nowadays to secure peer reviewers for scholarly journals, and the assumption that open research will be embraced by proxy should take this into consideration. Yes, we are in a reviewer crisis, and this is actually a topic of conversation that came up with the Scientific Advisory Board of Open Research Europe. So we meet with them twice a year to discuss, how the platform is progressing, how it's growing, and any issues that we've encountered on the platform. And incentivization of reviewers, and we're trying to get around the reviewer crisis was a topic that came up last year, I think in March. So we discussed a variety of different tools that we could use to try to incentivize reviewers to publish on the platform, including paying reviewers. But ultimately, everyone agreed that this was not the right way to go, as it could introduce bias into the system. I would say that we actually don't struggle to get reviewers on Open Research Europe as much as we see with some of the other platforms that F1000 publishes. I think because people recognize that this is research that is funded by the European Commission, it's most likely to be quite high quality research because it's gone through quite a stringent checking process already before it gets to us. So yeah, we actually find it easier on Open Research Europe to secure reviewers than on other platforms. I also personally think that the open peer review can sometimes help with this as well, because it does provide more credit to the reviewers when they are actually completing their reviews. So instead of just kind of secretly submitting a review for a paper and no one knowing about it, or having your name included in the list of reviewers that some journals publish at the end of the year, but you don't know whether you've contributed one review or 100 reviews to that journal. Every review that you publish or that you submit to Open Research Europe, once it's gone through our checking system, because we don't just publish the reviews immediately, we do check them first, is published alongside the manuscript, and your name is associated with that review. Each of the reviews also have their own DOIs, so they're actually independently citable, and you can add them to your ORCID record if you would like to do that. So yeah, I think it gives a little bit more credit to the reviewers, and you can actually see both in what the reviewer has said and in the response to the reviewer by the author, what changes were actually made in the manuscript as a result of what you said. So I think it really demonstrates the impact that reviewers have on the process of publishing a manuscript, from the first submitted version to the ultimately indexed version. Do you have anything to add to that, Emma?
No, I think that was everything. I think my one minor addendum as well is that in terms of reviewing in an open manner, it also is a really useful resource and tool for the community. Like, one of the pieces of feedback that we often get is that PhD students and early postdocs really find having this resource, open peer reviews, available as a really, really useful resource for them to learn how to review, because you never see it. So it's really useful for them as an example as well. So as an open reviewer, you get to pat yourself on the back a bit in that way as well, by contributing broadly to providing a potential academic learning resource as well.
Yeah, and our co-reviewing feature, I really love that as well. I don't think it gets enough praise. But if you're a more junior colleague working with a more senior researcher in your lab to review a paper, normally your name doesn't get on that at all. You don't get recognized for the work that you've done here. But on Open Research Europe, we do actually have the opportunity to co-review. So you will see some papers on Open Research Europe where one review is provided by more than one person, and that's where people have been working together on that. So I really like that feature, and it doesn't get shouted out enough, so I do try to talk about it. Is it possible for Cost Action to open a YouTube channel for sharing recordings of conferences or webinars? Lorna, I believe that already exists, and the recording for this webinar will be posted on the YouTube channel. I'm not sure if this person is asking about another one that maybe the results of the cost actions can actually be shared. I don't know if that's something you want to.
Yeah, no,
jump
I
in on.
wrote a little response to the question as well. Yeah, I mean, cost actions are
Sorry.
at liberty to choose their communication channels. So if whatever social media channels you want to open up, if you want to choose a YouTube or Vimeo or whatever video platform it is to share your action results, or the more informal things, recordings of webinars, yeah, please go ahead and do that. Any doubts, any worries that you have about that, don't hesitate to reach out to your administrative officer, the science officer of your action, or reach out to the communications team, and we'll very happily clarify any things that you have on that as well. And then maybe while I've got the floor, there's a question here: is, as a working group member, can I submit only studies related to a cost action, or can I also submit studies from other projects? So yeah, I think it's important to stress here that you get the foot in the door because you're a cost action member, but what you're submitting to Open Research Europe has to be about your cost action. So if you're in a cost action about honeybees, you can't, and your network is all about honeybees and the future of beekeeping, you can't submit a cost action, you can't submit an article to Open Research Europe about combustion engines, because that's another project that you're working on. Although I'd like to see that crossover. Maybe there is some crossover between honey and combustion engines. So maybe that was a terrible example. Yeah, so ideally, in order to be eligible, it has to be you're a member of the cost action and you're submitting results and work that's related to the cost action itself.
Yes.
It's also worth highlighting there are a wide array of eligible funding programs. So you might be a cost action beneficiary and also doing, maybe you have a honeybee cost action, but you also have a combustion engine ERC grant.
Yeah.
Then you could submit your combustion engine work on the ERC. But if you have a completely unrelated, not at all eligible funding program about a secret third thing, marine animals, then that marine animal one would be eligible. But yeah, so that's just a bit of extra clarity there as well.
Yeah, we get a lot of questions about the eligibility requirements, and people see it as a drawback. But I think, the Commission was trying to start somewhere, and they have to pay for it at the end of the day. So they've produced this as a service for their beneficiaries for now. However, the discussion they are having with the other national funders that have signed that statement of intent is part of that discussion is around broadening the eligibility requirements, perhaps to further than just those national funder beneficiaries as well. So please do have a look at that statement of intent, especially if one of your national funders is listed on there, because it might be really relevant for you if you want to submit your combustion engine work that doesn't come from your honeybee cost action. Let's have a look. Have we got anything else?
We do have a honeybee cost action actually that published on Open Research Europe recently as well, I think.
I know.
About honeybees, not about
they
combustion
didn't publish
engines.
about combustion engines, as far as I remember, yeah. Now, we do get a lot of cost actions contact us and they want to set up collections for their cost action, because they often struggle to find places to publish their work, because it's often very interdisciplinary and sometimes falls outside of the scope of more conventional restrictive journals. So yeah, please do get in touch with us if you have a cost action and you would like to set up a collection. Scan the QR code or book a meeting in with me, and we can definitely discuss that with you. So we probably have time for one last question. During a conference organised by COST, can articles be validated and accepted by Open Research Europe before being presented? And what is the duration of the evaluation process for articles submitted for review? Emma?
Yeah, sorry, can you repeat that question? I was looking at the statement of intent. Sorry.
During a conference organised by COST, can articles be validated and accepted by Open Research Europe before being presented? And what is the duration of the evaluation process for articles submitted for review?
You can present your articles in your conference sort of independently of the timeline of sort of open submitting to Open Research Europe. The timeline, so as I mentioned, in terms of turnaround times, which I think you're talking about in terms of the Open Research Europe publication model. The initial editorial checks on those sort of publication ethics and research ethics side of things, they'll get in touch with you within around a week, and depending on discussions backwards and forwards about any changes that would be needed, the article will be published online after that. Currently, it's hovering at sort of around 6 weeks from submission to publication. But again, if you address concerns promptly and sort of make sure that you have your ducks in a row when you submit, that timeline can be much, much shorter. So yeah, they can be operating kind of independently of one another. If you would like them to be sort of have that review before you present them, we, from publication to when the article is peer review complete, is hovering at around 2 months. So that's from the moment it's on the website to when it has those 2 peer review reports attached to it. But again, that's not like a guarantee. That is sort of average based on sort of the platform as a whole. Yeah, that's just mandatory caveat there. I hope that addressed your question there, Mohammed, but let me know if not. Happy to have a chat if I completely got the wrong end of the stick there.
Okay, I think that is it. I will do my best to collect the questions from the session, both from the chat and from the Q&A box, and try to answer any that we didn't get to, but I think we got to most of them. And then we can maybe post them on the ORE blog or something in response. And we'll also have some other questions going up soon anyway, because we ran another session for the European Research Council, and we still have to put up the remaining questions from that as well, so we might combine them. But yeah, either way, we'll finish answering these questions and get back to you. Otherwise, I think the Q&A has kind of died down a little bit, so I think we can probably sign off. So thank you so much to Lorna for helping us organize this. Thank you to everyone for attending, and thank you very much to Jacques for agreeing to come on and speak about your experiences publishing on the platform. I think everybody really appreciated being able to hear your experience from an author perspective and also from a collection advisor perspective. We do have a hand that's gone up. I don't know if you are feeling brave enough to unmute yourself. Or we have 2 hands. Oh, they've gone down. Oh, they've gone back up. Oh my goodness, what's happening? It's gone down. Okay. Let me see. Emma has. I have unmuted you, Emma. If you would like to speak and ask your question, then please go ahead. But if not, then I think we will end it there. Thank you so much, everyone. Emma, do you want to have something to say?
I was just saying, I think it's the react button is next to the raised hand button. So people were very nice and very kindly giving thumbs up and little claps. So thank you, everyone. Thanks again for everyone's listening. Thanks, Jack and Lorna, for being here as well.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.